Hello everyone, I'm glad you're here. How many of you actually already know something about me, my work? Just a few. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit a broader context of how the ideas that I'm going to present to you today came about and how they are continuing to unfold. The story basically starts very briefly around the Clinton scandal, if you remember, a while back. And it reminded me at that time that there was something interesting about living in the United States, where there would seem to be quite a bit of tolerance toward divorce and very little tolerance toward infidelity. Most of the world that was more family oriented had actually opted the other way around, preserving the family at all costs and compromising if need be in the relationship between the couple, mostly women. So I ventured out and wrote an article that was called In Search of Erotic Intelligence, from based on my work in New York City as a therapist, primarily as a couples therapist. I speak 9 languages, I work in 6. I kind of get a real multicultural perspectives on couples and sexuality. And it unfolded into the book Mating in Captivity, which is now pretty much translated into 24 languages. And I continue to travel to these places so that I can make sure that I have a certain understanding about couples that very much is in the context of the time. So when people come to my office and they tell me things like, I love her, I'm not in love with her. I know he loves me, but it's been years since I felt wanted. He never talks to me, and then he just wants to have sex. I am always hot. He's never interested. I can't remember the last time we made love. I've never had an orgasm with my husband, only by myself. Sometimes I just fake it to get it over with. With her, conditions have to be just perfect, so you can guess how often that is. I've never had sexual thoughts. I just whisked them away. I learned that sex was dirty a long time ago and a secret. So how do you expect me to talk about something that I learned my entire childhood to be silent about? She does me a favor and just lies there. I go to massage parlors with happy endings to get some kind of intimacy and to stay faithful. I can't imagine ever doing that with him. I knew when we married that we never had a sexual connection to start with, but that wasn't why I chose to be with him. He never touches me, and then he just wants to have sex. I need a man, not a child, who approaches me with baby talk. When he comes to me and says he wants to have sex with me, I don't feel like he wants me to want him. We have never talked about sex. Why do we have to go straight for my breast all the time? After seeing how much sex hurts, I just don't try anymore. Since the kids, we get our affection from them. There's no bigger turn-off than when he needs me. He doesn't seduce me, he begs. When you've been rejected countless times, you get the message. I know porn is a problem, but it's not because I would stop watching it that I would actually want to go to bed with her. She just wants me near her, not with her. And on and on. I think those are the sentences, some of them, that I hear here and in many other parts of the world. So I began to want to understand what is the relationship between love and desire. And I was particularly interested in couples who are loving, caring, good relationships, and who inevitably seem to be experiencing a decline of desire, and who presented themselves like this. It wasn't always the lack of closeness that seemed to stifle desire, but sometimes even too much closeness. So I began to check a whole bunch of assumptions. Here were my key questions. Why does good sex so often fade in couples who love each other as much as ever? Why does sex make babies and babies spell erotic disaster in couples? Why is the forbidden so erotic? What is it about transgression that is so central to the nature of desire? When you love, how does it feel? And when you desire, how is it different? Why doesn't good intimacy guarantee good sex, despite what we are told? And I began to play with these questions and to ask myself, what is the nature of erotic desire in long-term relationships? And what is the tension between our quest for stability and for committed relationships and our quest for novelty and adventure? What is the tension between love and desire? So, to understand some of this, I think you need a tiny bit of the historical context, because we have in about 150 years, particularly in the West, but just about anywhere where there is a romantic ideal, undergone a massive transformation. And it goes like this. Not too long ago, and in many parts of the world still today, people lived in communities. In that community, in that village, they received a sense of identity from their sense of belonging, a sense of continuity. You know who you are because you do what the people that you are with do, those kinds of things. And you get a sense of anchoring and grounding from belonging to that community. Your security needs are met. And then you move to the city gradually. And I'm giving you 150 years in about 3 minutes. But you move to the city. And with the move to the city and industrialization and individualism that rises, we start to experience newfound freedoms, including the freedom gradually to choose the person we want to marry or to live with. And as we have more freedom, we also are more alone. And as we are more alone, the choice of that partner takes on a whole new meaning, where the word intimacy isn't just we live together, we share the life, we raise the children, we starve together, we work the land, but intimacy becomes into me see. That is the Western modern definition. Intimacy means that I am going to talk to you, my beloved, and I'm going to bring to you my most precious, which is my internal life, my feelings, my aspirations, my anxieties, my worries, and you are going to listen to me. And as I translate myself to you and you are looking into me, I will know that I matter and I will have transcended my existential aloneness. Here starts modern love. And modern love then decides to do a bunch of other things. It brings a whole new addition to the quest for marriage. Marriage used to be primarily for economic sustenance, for family life, for social respectability, for children, and for companionship. Now we want all of this still, but we also want you, my beloved, to be my best friend and my trusted confidant and my passionate lover to boot. We also live twice as long. So that's a tall order for a party of two. But the couples that come to my office want that. And more westernized and the more egalitarian and the more the romantic ideal enters, the more these aspirations begin to travel across the globe. We do another thing with marriage. We bring love to marriage, but we also bring sex to love. And as we bring sex to love, we begin to link sexual satisfaction with marital happiness. And for that, we need a few major revolutions. Number one, contraception, which is the essence for the beginning of liberation of female sexuality. Two, the women's movement, which is the eradication or the fight for the eradication of power imbalances around sexuality. And three, the gay movement, so that we begin also to have a concept of orientation and particularly of sexual identity. And all of these things enter into modern love, in which we, for the first time, are willing to talk about something that is called a passionate marriage, which used to be a contradiction in terms. Passion has always existed, but it usually existed somewhere else, and it most often was a privilege for men. Always been a dangerous story for women. There's not a single woman who's passionate in the literature that doesn't die. Be careful. I didn't make it up. So what starts to happen is that we want, in this concept of passionate marriage, to bring together today in one relationship two fundamental sets of human needs. And let me see if let's see. And the two fundamental sets of human needs go like this. We all have a need for stability, for security, for predictability, for reliability, for dependability. That stuff we call home, the anchor, the grounding elements of our existence. But we also all have an equally strong need for adventure, for novelty, for newness, for mystery, for discovery, for exploration, for the unexpected, for the unknown, for the surprise. I think I give you a sense of what these two realms of existence are about. Modern love is about reconciling these two sets of fundamental human needs, which I call in short term intimacy and sexuality, or you could call love and desire, or you could call autonomy and togetherness, or you could call connection and independence, or you could call safety and adventure. It's all about that same reconciling of these two realms of experience into one relationship. But it's very difficult to ask the same person to be at the same time the comfort and the edge, to be at the same time predictable and reliable and secure and surprising and innovative and unexpected. And you don't solve it with Victoria's Secret. Or there is no Victor's Secret for that matter. You know, it's an existential dilemma. And so for those of you who are asking for answers right off the bat, I will tell you that reconciling the erotic and the domestic is not a problem that you solve, but it's a paradox that you manage. I do not have a solution for that. However, I work with a lot of couples who come in wanting to recapture something. So that was the first entry for me into this whole topic. And when we think about these two sets of needs, it looks like they, you know, so how do you put them together? But if I give you the image of a little child, you will understand that it actually can often exist quite naturally. The little kid sits on your lap. And if all goes well, at some point they want to go out into the world to discover, to explore. It's called the exploratory needs. It's very interesting, this balance between the anchor and the waves, between security and adventure, between connection and exploration. It is true for any living organism. In nature, it is true for any society, it is true for any corporation. It's actually a systemic balance. So it's not that this is a new idea, but this little kid walks off, and at some point they turn around and they look at the adult that is here. And depending on the reaction of this adult, a whole set of experiences will unfold. If this adult says, "Kiddo, the world's a great place, go for it, have fun, go discover, I am here," what does the child usually do? And further, and goes further, because they are at the same time experiencing freedom and connection. They are at the same time experiencing the bond and the separateness. And the balance is very natural. This world of exploration, of playfulness, of entering into your own world of the imagination, of entering in your own erotic mind, as I will come to explain to you, starts from childhood on. And this ability to experience a holding on to yourself while staying connected to another. But if you have an adult here and that person says, "I'm lonely, I'm depressed, I'm anxious, I'm worried, what's so great out there? Don't we have it all enough, you and I?" Basically messages that say to the little child, "Come back." Then you have a few options. There are three main ones. Child number one is the little kid who will come back right away and who would rather lose a part of themselves in order not to lose the other. In order not to lose you, I will forgo a part of me. In order not to lose the secure bond, I will forgo my freedom. And I will learn to love in a certain way. I will learn that love, which always comes with responsibility and worry and care, when my experience comes with extra worry, anxiety, responsibility, and care. So that when I start to love you and I connect with you, it gets harder for me to go back inside myself, into my own imaginary space, into my own playpen, into my own sandbox. And I will begin to experience love in such a way that the more I love, the harder it is for me to make love to the person I love. I can make love perfectly fine with people I care about a lot less. Do you understand? If you don't, just shake your heads. You became very quiet. Is a way in which I'm going to lead into a formula that I will develop later on, which is tell me how you were loved, and I will tell you how you make love. Because our emotional history translates itself into the physicality of sex. Our emotional history is written into our bodies and will become a part of how we can experience at the same time what in lovemaking and in sexuality with a partner often exists, which is my ability to be at the same time generous and self-absorbed. If I experience love with anxiety for the connection, I cannot go and be safely self-absorbed. And if I can't safely be self-absorbed, by the way, I don't come. I don't come. Physiologically, you don't come. You come too soon, you don't come, or you come much too late, but you struggle with the act of the climax, because the climax itself can only happen if you are completely immersed in the experience. If for in any reason you worry about anything else, you have a thwarted sexual experience. No pleasure, no climax. It's so precise. It just goes all the way till the end. The second child doesn't come back immediately, because it's a little kid who has zest and vigor and wants to go out there and still discover and explore. So they go, but they go and they always look over their shoulder. Are you okay? Are you not worried? You're not going to collapse on me? You're not going to punish me when I come back? You're not going to be depressed? So they are gone, but they're not really gone. And those are often the people who will tell you, in the beginning, intimacy, sexuality, it flowed, no problem. But the closer they become, the more involved they become, the more they love, and the harder it becomes for them to make love to the person they love. It's very simple. You cannot experience anxiety and pleasure at the same time. Pleasure is predicated on the experience of unself-consciousness and freedom. If you worry, you can't have fun. It's fundamental. So for that, first of all, let me tell you the third child. The third child, by the way, doesn't come back because there is nothing to come back to. Could have a life filled with passion and lots of instability. So to understand this notion about anxiety and pleasure, I began to think about what is the difference between sexuality and eroticism. Because I'm actually much more interested in the erotic than in sex or in sexuality. Modernity took eroticism and gave it a very sexual meaning. But throughout history and in all religions, eroticism has a much broader meaning. And the way I came to this was that I work in the area of sexuality and relationships. But I also work in the area of trauma. And I would look at people who have undergone severe trauma, and I would begin to ask myself, when do I know that they come back to life, that they reconnect? Particularly working around torture victims and watching what happens there. And systematically people would talk when they are able to be creative again, when they're able to go back into the world, when they're able to leap out again, exactly like that kid who leaves the base for the first time. And I began to make a very personal connection to my own history, which is that I grew up in Belgium in a community that was predominantly Holocaust survivors. But you can translate this to any trauma. In my community, there were two groups: those who survived and those who revived. Or in other words, those who didn't die and those who came back to life. The people who didn't die, they lived quite tethered to the ground. Vigilant, fearful, protective, not safe, and there was no room for pleasure. Because if you are having fun, it means you're not vigilant. You can't be on watch and have pleasure. They don't go together. So if you have pleasure, you feel guilty, and so do your children feel guilty. The people who came back to life were the people who basically understood how to keep themselves alive in the face of adversity, how to stay connected to life force, how to stay connected to eros, to the vital energy. They understood eroticism as a quality of aliveness and vibrancy and vitality. That's much broader than just sexuality. The couples that I see that complain about the listlessness of their sex lives, they sometimes may want more sex, but they always want better sex. And the better that they are longing for is that quality of renewal, connection, playfulness, aliveness, i.e. the erotics of sex. People have had sex and feel nothing. It's very simple. Women know that. They do it all over the world. You know, it's not about the doing of it. I'm not interested in the mechanics, and I'm not interested in the frequency and the how hard, how long, how many. Eroticism as a quality of aliveness is a very different thing. Now, what is eroticism? It is the metaphor of sexuality. It's basically sexuality transformed by the human imagination. In order to stay alive in the face of adversity, you need a good dose of imagination, of hope, of what life will be like, of who you can be, of what you still can become. That is the project in a relationship too. So the central agent of the erotic act is our imagination. And we could say that the crisis of desire is a crisis of the imagination. What is desire? To own the wanting. To own the wanting. That little kid that goes off is in his or her wanting. But if on the way they can do this, and then look at you in that gleeful way that says, I did something I'm not supposed to do, and I broke a rule, then I know that I really do what I want. Why is the forbidden so erotic? Because there is something about not doing what you're supposed to or doing what you shouldn't that puts you in direct connection with freedom and with autonomy and with, if I do what I'm not supposed to, then I know that it's really what I want that I'm doing and nobody's telling me. There's no threat of submission and subjugation when you break a rule. There's a threat of punishment. That's a different story. There are negative consequences. But you understand, it's fundamental. If you want to know that what you do, and especially around sexuality, where so many people have no rights, where so many people cannot talk about pleasure because they have to talk about duty, where so many people need to use it as a way to secure other parts of their life, you bet that once it becomes what I'm supposed to do, it becomes much harder for many of us to want to do it. Which is one of the prime reasons why desire becomes so much more difficult in committed relationships. Because it's become the thing you're supposed to do. And not only that, but you're supposed to want to do it. Because we, for the first time in history, by the way, have a model of sexuality in long-term relationships that is completely rooted in desire, right? We're not having kids, 10, 12 kids, many parts of the Western world anyway. So we don't have an incentive for much sexual activity. After 2, we could stop for many people. In order to have 10, many people need to have 14 because 4 of them won't make it. That makes for a lot of sex. We don't know how good, but certainly it makes for a lot of sex. And then we also, in the West anyway, are hoping for a model where less and less women need to have sex because it's part of their marital duty. So we only do have a model of sexuality that is rooted in desire, because I feel like it, and maybe you do too, and maybe at the same time. And for me. Because desire can continue to exist, but not necessarily for the person that's right next to you. So eroticism, What's also important about it is that it is infinite, it is plural. Even our solitary pleasures can be plural, even if it's other versions of ourselves, or other ages of ourselves, or other health conditions of ourselves. Our imagination allows us to remember ourselves when we had breasts that we no longer have, or hair that we no longer have, or youth that we no longer had. It's very important to understand the importance of the erotic mind and the imagination in the sustaining of desire, in staying interested and engaged with oneself as well as with our partner. More importantly, the erotic is about cultivating pleasure for its own sake. So, because of that sentence, I began to ask a certain question, which is, it goes like this, and actually we can do it very briefly. It goes like that. I turn myself off when, or I turn myself off by, or I turn off desire when, which is not the same as what turns me off is, and you turn me off when. Most couples come in to talk about what the other partner does that takes their desire or pleasure away, but not their own agency, their own capacity in maintaining a connection with their own erotic self. And this exercise I took from my colleague Gina Ogden and then translated it to couples. So I turn myself off when I shut down, I extinguish myself. I extinguish myself when I look at my emails before going to bed. I extinguish myself, or I turn myself off, or I shut down when I don't take time for myself, or when I am worried about the children, or when I worry about money, or when there are hurricanes in the middle of my city, or lots of things like that. I turn myself off when? What would you say? Go ahead, give me a few.
When I feel fat.
When I feel fat. I turn myself off when? Yeah?
When I have a lot of work.
When I have a lot of work to do.
When I watch the news late at night.
When I watch the news late at night. That's a real aphrodisiac. Or anti-aphrodisiac, more correctly. I turn myself off when? When I have a lot of worries.
After an unresolved argument.
After an unresolved argument. I.e. when I am in a protective mode and I need to keep myself closed. That's the underlying premise of that. I turn myself off when? What you will see is that there is very little that is precisely sexual about it. It's really about one's connection to one's own vitality, energy, awakeness. If you turn yourself off, your partner can do anything. If there is nobody at the reception desk, there is nothing that passes. You can tell the other person, do this, do that, do this, do that. But if you have not checked, if you are showing up at the reception hall, then there won't be an experience, there won't be an encounter, and there won't be a connection. If I say I turn myself on when? I turn on my desires by. Not you turn me on when, and not what turns me on is. But I turn myself on. I connect to my desire when I listen to music. I connect to my desires when I dance. I connect to my desires when I go with my friends, when I have intensive exchanges with friends. I connect to my desires when I think about me and my husband when we were young. I connect to my desires when I think about other lovers before my husband. Who cares? All of that, right? I turn myself on when? What would you say? I connect to my desires. I am alive when? Give me a few.
I feel safe.
When I feel safe. And I feel safe when?
I'm not afraid.
I feel safe when I'm not afraid. And I'm not afraid when?
I'm not threatened.
When I'm not threatened. And I'm going to go one more time. And I'm not threatened when? There's no correct answer. This is just you. It's not like I'm fishing for something.
I'm not threatened when I don't know.
Generally, we are not threatened when we feel that it's safe to go out into the world and nothing bad will happen, that we won't be shot, that we won't be punished, when we feel confident, when we are not on guard, those kind of things, right? Okay. I turn myself on when? What would you say?
I go dancing.
When I go dancing. It's the one thing, by the way, you cannot do and be sad. You can paint and be sad, you can listen to music and cry out your eyes, but you cannot dance and be sad. Which is why it's a very important exercise to use with the couples I see. Yes? You said? In the back?
In the times when we are ourselves.
When we
are ourselves.
When we are ourselves. I turn myself on when?
I watch other couples being romantic on TV or.
Yes, when I watch other couples be romantic on TV, when I immerse myself in the fiction of others, right? Okay, so.
I think sexy music too, you know, finding those, whatever that music is,
right,
turns a person on
right,
inside.
Right, because the music or the suggestiveness of it is essential to the erotic. Suggestiveness, anticipation. What is anticipation? Why is it imagination? Animals have sex. We are the only creatures that have an erotic life. What it means is this. I can make love to somebody for hours, have a wonderful time, have a blissful experience, and touch absolutely nobody. Just because I can imagine it. I don't have to do it to live it. It's a very different story. Lots of people do it and live nothing. But lots of people live it without having to do nothing. You just hint at it. You just imagine it. So the suggestiveness of the movies, the suggestiveness of the music, the anticipation, and the longing that goes with it. So you see, what's interesting is I think about eroticism from that angle, and then I begin to look at the dynamic between love and desire. Okay? I think that when we think about love, the verb would be to have. When we think about desire, the verb would be to want. Love wants to know the beloved. Love wants to narrow the gap. Love does not want threat. It wants to feel safe. It doesn't want tension. It doesn't want that. Desire, however, often needs a space. It needs otherness. It needs an other to go and to discover and to explore. It needs a place to go. I would say that sexuality isn't something you do. Sex is not something you do. Sex is a place you go. It's a place you go inside yourself and with another or others. So you don't ask, what do you do in sex? I prefer to ask, what does sex mean for you? Where do you go in sex? What parts of yourself do you connect to in that experience? What do you seek to express there? Is it a place for you where you finally can be taken care of? Is it a place for you when you don't have to worry about anything? Is it a place where you don't have to feel fat because you have no age when it feels good? Is it a place where you can be naughty and break the rules which you don't allow yourself to do in your professional, very responsible family life and all of that? Is it a place where you can be safely aggressive and more, you know, when you see that little kid and you goes away with that cup and you say, give me the cup, and they go, you know, there is aggression in desire, not violence, aggression, as in agir, as in to act, as in striving, as in asserting oneself. The biggest turn on, worldwide, by the way, worldwide, in my experience, for men and for women, is confidence. That's it. It has nothing to do with size. It has not much to do with shape. That's all in there. But it's a lot to do with confidence. And the way I began to become aware of that is that I would go around and I would ask everywhere one question. When do you find yourself most drawn to your partner? What would you say? I am most drawn to my partner, not sexually attracted, drawn to. I am most drawn to my partner when? Give me a few. Are you going to be shy on me? Yes.
When they have an idea they want to convince me of.
When they have an idea that they want to convince me of. Which means that they come with full conviction. And they want to win you over. And it can be not just sexual, it can be about anything, right? Okay. Yes. I am most drawn to my partner when?
When he's sure about what he wants.
When he's sure about what he wants. Yes. Yes.
When he wants to share something with me.
When he wants to share something with me. Yeah?
When I see his eyes alive with passion for something he's doing.
When I see his eyes alive with passion for something he's doing. Yes?
When he's speaking with other people and they're really interested in what he has to say.
When he's speaking with other people and he engages them and they are engaged with him. Yes. Can I hear some of the male voices? For some reason you're quiet.
We're listening first before we speak.
Yes.
When you see a partner, you're in your partner, the true loving actions and words, and the ability to connect mentally, physically, emotionally, that is a good sign. And all of that, I believe, has to take place in an atmosphere of complete confidence, respect, and true love. And people that experience that.
Can I just ask you to, in a very short version, I am most drawn to my partner when? It's a very quick thing, actually. You'll see why I'm asking it to you as is. Yes?
When they read poetry.
When they read poetry. Yeah?
Being funny, charismatic.
Being funny, charismatic. Yes?
And she's feeling good about herself.
When she's feeling good about herself. Absolutely. So here is the thing. What really strikes me about this one is that it's cross-culturally the same answers everywhere. There's only one answer, by the way, that is gender specific, which you haven't mentioned, but it is when he plays with the kids. I don't usually hear men say, when she plays with the kids, as sexy. And it's not something I hear in gay couples, I'm most drawn to, particularly. But there are 5 main ones that are across the board. One you didn't mention, but I'm sure you know. It's when he's gone, or when she's gone, when he's away, or when we reunite. Desire is fundamentally rooted in absence and longing, just as much as it is in having it in front of us, which is why we're going to go back to the question, can we want what we already have? I will try to give Barbara an answer. The second one is what you spoke so beautiful. When I see my partner doing something they're passionate about, or feel good about themselves, or in their element. Because when my partner is or engaged with other people, when my partner is or convincing me, which requires the same position, when I look at that partner who is fully immersed in their own thing, I look at a separate person and there is otherness. I look at my partner from a certain distance, not here. And also, because here, you, by the way, if you put your partner that close, you can't see. Put your finger here, you will not be able to see its contours. And if the person is too far off, you can't see them either. But you do see them at a comfortable distance. It's both and, comfortable and distance, so that you can have a new perception. Because sometimes mystery is nothing new but to look with new eyes at someone that is already so familiar, but is momentarily once again somewhat unknown, somewhat mysterious, somewhat elusive. When you see that partner engaging other people in conversation, or that partner that's doing something so passionate, or that partner that's so convincing, you are looking at a person and you don't really know what they're experiencing. They are still other. And that otherness is key for desire. You want to explore that otherness. You're curious about it. If safety is a precondition for attachment, curiosity is the ingredient of the erotic. It's a different ingredient. You need both. But the ingredient for eroticism is curiosity, which is why boring sex is when there is nothing to explore, to discover, foregone conclusion. And to want sex, it needs to be sex that is worth wanting. And in too many couples, it's just not worth it. So many people would rather go for a 30-mile bike ride than spend a 30-minute with their partner.
Everything is more important.
Okay? So when he is with other people, or she is with other people, or engaging, what you also get is the shadow of the third. That person that is talking with other people, that is engaging other people, is momentarily not mine. My answer to can we want what we already have is that in fact we never have. Your partner never belongs to you. They're only there on loan with an option to renew. They never belong to you, because the moment you love, you need to deal with the vulnerability of love, which is the fear of loss. You can lose them to death, to illness, and to another. You can never secure love. But in that sense, I would say that passion goes hand in hand with the amount of uncertainty that we can tolerate. Not big uncertainty, but just enough uncertainty so that we can remain curious. You can't have curiosity with utter certainty, because then there is nothing to be curious about. You need that sense of novelty, mystery, adventure, playfulness that you get when you don't know what's going to happen, that openness. And if desire is fueled by the unknown, many of us in our intimate relationships have two choices, faced with the unknown in our midst. Either I get anxious, because I don't like that. I settled with you because I want something that is committed, and committed means that it's reliable, and reliable means that it is tomorrow what it is today. That sometimes, in order to secure love, I will trample the very erotic vitality that made the relationship into being. I will squeeze out the very things that would actually keep it alive and fresh, because I need to feel that security. It's not inherently a contradiction, but some of us, in the name of securing love, will trample out the very ingredients that would actually make desire stay alive. And you know, one of the things that happened in the transition to modern love is that it's not that we are more insecure today than we were before, actually quite the contrary in the West. It's that we bring all our insecurity needs to one person. Actually, one could say that the fate of modern couples is that we bring to one person what once an entire village used to provide. And then we are surprised that we crumble under the weight of the expectations. So, in that dynamic, I would say that some of us have not had enough security. We all come out of our childhood, in that dance that I described between the child and the parent, with an experience around closeness and with an experience around freedom. Some of us come out of our childhood needing more protection, needing more connection, needing more reliability. And some of us come out of our childhood needing more space, needing more freedom, and needing more separateness. What happens in modern love is that we tend to partner with somebody whose proclivities match our vulnerabilities. So a person in need for space meets a person who is more equipped at space. And then later on we complain that that person is not connected enough. See, the dance begins to take place. Most of us come out of our childhood with both experiences, and each of us needs sometimes more one than the other, and it changes in the course of our life. We do not have one sexuality. We have multiple sexualities. They change with age, they change with health, they change with medication, they change with loss, etc. But primarily they change with self-confidence, which is why it only gets better the more mature we become. We may have slightly less libido, but we usually have a lot more satisfactory experiences. It is particularly true for women. Women if they don't like themselves, there is absolutely no way that they can understand why somebody else would like them. And sexually more so than any. Philogenea is really crucial for women. But it's true for anybody living in our body. If this body is a place where I like to live because it's my home and it's a place in which I feel comfortable and it's like a chateau in which I can go and spend much time in all the rooms and I like to linger in there, I am much more likely to invite someone to enter it. I'm not just talking about entering orifices, I'm talking about entering my universe. And why would you not want to come visit me and spend time with me? But if this place here, my body, my home, is a jail that I can't wait to get out of, it's a place I don't like because I don't like the way it looks, because it was wounded, because it was violated, but what is clear is that I don't want to be inside this one. Why would I want somebody else to want to visit me? If I don't want to spend time in there, why should you come and be there? And if you want to be in there, it's because you don't see what I see. And if you don't see what I see, probably you're stupid. Because only the ones who see what I see, which is the negative, are the ones that are smart, in that logic. Okay? How am I doing with time? Just so I have a sense. I asked my Barbara to be my timekeeper, but she's so immersed that she's not paying attention. Yes, let me say one more thing about the erotic landscape. It's very important for me that we understand, when I say it's not something that we do, but it's a place we go, that you understand that eroticism is basically the challenges, or I would say the experiences around arousal and pleasure, mixed in with our entire human drama. Meaning that in our erotic life translates the thrills, the challenges, the hurts, the trauma of our childhood. In our desire lie the details of our childhood. And that's why I want to talk for a moment about the erotic blueprint, actually. Let me talk about that first. Then I'll talk about the assumptions in the field. The erotic blueprint goes like this. Tell me how you were loved. So we already began to look at a few of the things of how you were loved. How and with whom did you learn to love? Were you protected as a child? Or did you have to flee for protection? Did you have the right to have needs, or were you told you don't need that? What do you need that for? You already have enough. If you have learned I have enough, I don't need more, you generally, and you translate that into your body and into the physicality of sex, generally you don't come either, by the way, because you already had enough, and because the other person already had what he or she needed, so why bother? When you start to become invisible to yourself, you don't allow yourself the indulgence of pleasure, which means in order to have desire, which is to own the wanting, it means that you need to feel that you deserve to want. And in order to deserve to want, you need to feel that you are lovable. Because if you're lovable and you deserve to want, then you deserve that someone would actually enjoy giving you what you want. Translate that into sexuality. Are you doing the little drawing in your heads? Yes. Okay. So, did your parents monitor your needs, or did you have to monitor theirs? If you monitor the other people's needs, you often don't know what you want. Which is why many people, you say, what would you like? Don't know. But they know if what you do is wrong, they'll tell you, I don't want that. But they don't know what they want. They just know what feels good and what doesn't feel good. But that's not the same as a level of self-knowledge and self-awareness with the permission to have that awareness, to then know that it's okay to know what I like and then to communicate what I like, because there's someone who I actually believe is interested in knowing it and would love to respond in kind. It's that internal dialogue. That stuff, by the way, can take place within 2 seconds. And many of these 2 seconds accumulate into couples who sometimes do not have any erotic life together anymore, because it can lead to that kind of a shutdown. Was I allowed to cry out loud? Was I allowed to laugh out loud? But I like the crying out loud, because, you know, if I do like this, Without a sound, it looks weird, right? It's bizarre. It's almost creepy to see somebody, right? But we don't think that it's creepy that people would actually make love without a beep. I'm not talking about talking. I'm talking about silence. It's like babies that are born without a scream. Do you know how much oppression and suppression must go in there in order to become a silent lover? It's impossible otherwise. The body isn't wired for that. It's as if you were running and one wouldn't hear the acceleration of your breath. How can your heart begin to palpitate? So if you shut down the energy in your body, which means you contract the body, then you also contract the experience of pleasure. Pleasure needs an openness, spiritually, emotionally, and physically. It needs an openness. And openness means that you create space. And when you create space, then you can bring in energy. It's the difference between a motion like this, that's one kind of energy, versus a motion like this. That's a different kind of energy. It's very physical, but it's translated at every level of us. In this blueprint, voila. I want to link it to a number of assumptions, because the blueprint gives me a picture of, if you feel guilty about taking, you feel even more guilty sexually. If you feel ashamed about what you like, if you feel there's something wrong with you, you may feel it even more so sexually. You may feel it alone. You won't necessarily, this is not stuff you talk about. But basically, how we view ourselves and how we view the other comes directly into that experience. Now, what happens with our preferences is that our mind has the ability to undo and to transform the traumas and the challenges that we once experienced and turn them into sources of excitement and pleasure. If I was never seen, it may very well be that in my imaginary world, I have a whole set of experiences in which nobody can resist me. If I could never say what I want, in my imaginary world, I may have entire images, situations, experiences in which I get to dictate and people abide and people enjoy doing exactly what I want. Our mind will transform so that we will bifurcate, so we will circumvent the pitfalls of intimacy. It goes like this. Our emotional needs don't necessarily match our sexual needs. If in love I like mutuality, reciprocity, protection, desire often has a much darker side to it that is much less selfless, much more selfish. That isn't, by the way, always politically correct. If everybody fantasized about a bed of roses, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But what goes up there is often the very thing that excites us as night is the thing that we will go and demonstrate against during the day. We transform it. But we've often had a mistaken view about it, which was that what people fantasize about or what they imagine is that which they want in real life. And that's not necessarily the case. In fact, not at all. The same way that when the kids play roles and games, they don't want to really be in that situation. And by the way, you cannot play with something that is actually a part of your condition. If you don't have power, you don't play at not having power. You only play with something that isn't part of your own existential reality. Otherwise, you can't detach yourself enough from it to go and fantasize or play with it. But fantasy is not costumes and roles and setups. Fantasy is anything that enhances the erotic experience. It can be the time of day, it can be the weather. But it is what allows us to be in touch with what is pleasurable and soothing and sensual and all of that. In our field, there are a number of assumptions, and I'll leave us with that and then go to questions. And those are some of the main ones I've been wanting to question. I like to question assumptions. But and by the way, I question them and I have my ideas about them and I sound very confident, but I'm sure of absolutely nothing. I don't think I'm right. I just don't know necessarily that what I've been told has always worked for me. For example, that sexual problems are always the consequence of relational problems. But I would see, and I still see, a lot of couples that are really caring, loving, open couples. But they experience the paradox of the domestic and the erotic. They are couples who love each other very much, which is why they stay together as long as they do. But they don't have desire, and they often are sexless for years. For years, not just a week, a month, etc. And the premise is that if sexual problems are the consequence of relationship problems, then what you need to do as a therapist is to explore the relationship, the state of the union, find out what goes on, and then by consequence see how it manifests and how it extends itself in the bedroom. But in fact, a lot of couples come to therapy, get to feel a lot better, communicate better, fight less, play again, laugh again, better as parents together, etc. And it does change nothing in the bedroom, because the rules of the kitchen are not the same as the rules of the other rooms. What works as consensus and sameness and flattening of differences and all these things that make for modern relationships, interchanging of roles and all of that, isn't necessarily how people experience their erotic life. The other thing is talking. That intimacy in the West, for sure, is primarily experienced through the avenue of the words. By communicating verbally, we actually experience ourselves to be more intimate and closer. That is true for a lot of people. But a lot of us actually experience and express closeness with our bodies in ways that with words we never do. In fact, our mother tongue for 1.5 years is the body, long before we talk. And in therapy, it's a very important distinction, because if intimacy is going to be so important today, we should at least be bilingual. When we favor the verb as a venue for intimacy, we feminize intimacy and we keep men at a disadvantage. And we keep women colluding with age-old historical oppressions that she can only talk with her body when it's wrapped in layers of relatedness. So she doesn't really have to admit that. Her body is as much of a venue for closeness, for connection, for self-expression and all of that, because that's what those women do. The ones you don't want to be that. You get that tension. It's a very important tension. I think I pretty much have covered all of this. Yeah, I have. I'm gonna just stop right there and have you talk to me. Yeah.
Actually, if we could start with a couple questions from the virtual audience.
Yes.
The in-person audience here a chance to gather their thoughts quick. This question comes from a learner who asks, how might you empower a client with a strict moral upbringing to put aside his or her cultural beliefs and venture into the imaginative realm without a sense of guilt?
I wouldn't. I would not ask people to step aside the moral strictures in which they live. I don't compete against God. I'm a very tiny little creature here. So I need to understand, first of all, what is the moral structure? Are we talking about the religious structure? If so, what is the religious structure? Are we talking about the gender structure? Are we talking about a patriarchal structure? What is the authority model here that I am addressing? Then, within that model, I want to understand if really this is the model, or is this the experience of the model that this person has? Many of us have far more internal restrictions because we took the authority and then we applied it on top of our own. Condemnation, censorship, and all of that. Then I will ask, within your religion, for example, what do you know? What is allowed? What can you experience? What does your religion say about the body, about pleasure, about nudity, about the flesh? Which structure are we in? I have a fairly good notion of some of the differences of the religions for whom the body and the flesh is vilified and lesser and the spirit is superior, and the ones in which the body is actually not seen as just this thing that takes you from point A to point B, but if we could do without, because it's the lesser part of us, the more debased part of us. However, every religion has an erotic strain. Every religion, you know, it's not sexual, but because if you really take eroticism in the mystical sense of the word, it's actually a closeness with the divine. It's about transcendence and about otherness. So I can use a language that enters within a religious framework in which the most chaste religious figures have passionate experiences. They're just not going through the body. So passion is in every model, if you want. It's just, I want to find out what is the particular... Okay. Then I will ask that person, do you have a grandparent? Or do you have a clergy? Do you have a person that is imbued with a certain authority, that's in your circle, that you could speak to about this, that you could ask? And then I would begin to explore the erotic mind. That's another piece of it. And I would just, because I want to know if the question comes from somebody who actually has a lot of fantasies and feels very bad about it. What does this say about me? How dare I think these kind of things? What does it say about me if I get off on some things like that, or if I think about that? And I would first of all describe fantasy, and I would say, you know, let me talk to you about what we know about fantasy. Then maybe I would give certain things to read so that they would have a chance to see, you know, there's a whole literature that describes the internal life, the erotic interiority of people. And then I would maybe give a questionnaire. There are some very safe questionnaires, and if this person wants to email me, I'll send a questionnaire that is about exploring fantasies very gently. It doesn't ask you to describe what goes on in there, you know, but in the privacy of this, you know, that place. But enough to get a sense as to where is the conflict, where is the shame, and where is the guilt, and where are the possibilities, and where are the openings, and what can actually be brought out that can help this person thrive and live better.
Great, thank you. Another student points to the stereotype that men are always ready for sex, while women while women might use it for security or even as leverage to achieve something. In your experience, is there a significant difference in desire between the sexes?
Ha! I love that question. And I like the fact that the word stereotype was put into the question too. I'm going to put this one on its head for a moment. You know, first of all, in the office of a modern therapist, there are just about as many men as women who are experiencing the breakdown of desire. Let's start with that. And in both situations, I would say that one of the main impasses around sex and around desire in these couples is because the couples have become too familial. Familial, not familiar. Whenever you hear people say, I live with my best friend, or my brother, or my sister, or he's my child, or she's my child, or I already have 2 kids, I don't need a 3rd one, and all of those, when you hear people talk about each other as family, in the best sense of the word, but also with its consequences, if we are well screwed together, we don't want sex in the family. And we will touch the taboo. So that's the first thing. Second, there are plenty of men who have a hard time eroticizing the mother of their children. Worldwide. Third, I think that to say that men want sex is to miss what I think are 2 major aspects and maybe not misunderstood, but not enough represented aspects of male sexuality. The first one is this. I think that in many places, little boys by age 4 pretty much go through a training in which a whole set of feelings need to be repudiated because they contradict the making of manhood. Vulnerability, tenderness, fearfulness, softness, all of these things that don't really are part of the making of a man that is competitive. Now I'm really going to talk stereotypically, right? Competitive, fearless, and striving and all of that. And what happens to many men is that the body becomes the place where those repudiated, those forbidden emotions and needs and longings become stored. And so many of these men, sex is the place where all those emotional needs get met. Many times when women say all he wants is sex, she misses the point in my experience, especially with that man. Because what that man wants is sex. He can have sex anywhere. It's ubiquitous. So getting sex is not a problem anywhere today. But he wants what sex can allow him, a connection, a closeness, a place where he finally doesn't have to be responsible for anybody else, and a boss, and a leader, and a strong guy, and all of that. And you know that it's that meaning of sex when he is thwarted or frustrated, he becomes irritable and depressed and angry, like a little baby that is shaking the crib and saying, pick me up, pick me up. And you know that the need is emotional and not sexual. The next part of it, and that's an interesting part too, that I draw from the work of Marta Mayana, is this. We tend to want to say that male sexuality is not relational, right? Because we confuse the autonomous, spontaneous arousal of men with the desire of men. Men experience a crisis of desire when they are unemployed, when they are anxious, when they don't feel good about themselves. But more importantly, so self-esteem and desire are just as related in men. The difference that between men and women is that when men feel bad, it also affects their feelings about sex, but they are more likely to use sex to make themselves feel better. Whereas when women feel bad, they are more likely to discard sex and look for food to feel better, or other friends. But the connection between desire and internal life is probably, I think, is not the same, but is very much in each gender. However, men have to deal with a fear of rejection. That is relational. Men have to deal with performance. Men have to deal with competence. That is relational. Men often are much more into saying, I enjoy seeing her turned on. I enjoy seeing her, the pleasure I can give her. And in fact, are often those descriptions, because there are lots of men. I'm just giving an answer to the opposite of the stereotype. Is that sentence of I love the pleasure that I give to her, it makes me feel good to see her feel good, is not a sentence that I hear so much from women. Women's sexuality is more narcissistic many times and less generous. And that goes against a lot of the stereotype. Wow, wow, he says. He's going to remind her of that one. That lady there. But what I'm saying is competence, performance, rejection. Those are relational dimensions of male sexuality. To then say that men's sexuality is not related and they just want sex all the time, I think it misses the point. But men will turn more often to sex, and men have a more easy autonomous arousal, because it's just anatomically. They find it sooner, it's right there, it's visible. And I have two boys. I've seen their hands in their pants for many years when they were little. Without knowing what they do, they understand the soothing experience, the calming experience of self-touch, and it's a different kind of self-touch. There's not that many men who twirl their hair.
One more from the virtual audience.
This is on top of it going online to the virtual world.
The student asks,
There are 300 people watching this thing.
what approach might you take with the client that you refer to that has the mindset that they're undesirable or might experience even self-loathing and have no interest in anyone visiting them, as you said?
Oh, it's beautiful. It's really about slowly helping a person become kinder to themselves, more self-loving, first and foremost. Appreciate themselves. Appreciate that they could feel good, that somebody would want to make them feel good. That beauty isn't just in a certain kind of standard of what the magazines are showing us. Or that the person on the other side isn't there to hurt them, isn't going to reenact an experience of trauma and violation that they experienced earlier. So I will often work with dance. I think that especially partner dancing, because it is completely physical, especially tango for that matter. It's physical, it's sensual, and it's contained. It has a very clear framework. So anything that is at the same time a contained structure of touch if the person is open to that. I will work with these people about water. What is your favorite temperature of the water? Do you like to take baths or showers? When you take a shower, do you wash yourself in 30 seconds, or have you ever actually looked at what you wash? How about you actually took one of these egg things that you make boiled eggs with, and it's about 3 or 4 minutes, and you're not allowed to wash yourself any faster than till all the sand has reached the other side? Have you ever actually explored your own body? Have you, because this body is taking you to many places and allowing you to do a lot of things. When you eat, do you know what you're eating? How fast do you swallow? I would like you to sit down and to make yourself a lavish meal. I had a woman in one of the sessions that I often will show that tape. And this was a woman that was very invisible. She learned to be invisible. She learned she doesn't need anything. And for 22 years, she didn't have a single orgasm with her husband. She just did the job. She did the favor. She got him off her back and all of that. And then at one point, I mean, I can tell the story a little longer, but what was an interesting thing, she says to me, okay, so the first thing she did is she staged an experience in which she she tied herself up and to the bed, and she put a little note on the door that says, "Help me." Now, it's not about the tying up. It's about the fact that she asserted herself and that she claimed a desire. It doesn't matter what the desire was. And that once she claimed the desire, she was utterly uninterested in his reaction. Plus, when I said to her, what was it like when he came home? She said, I don't know, I couldn't see. But the I couldn't see meant I wasn't worried about him and how he looks at me, and I'm looking at him looking at me. That makes for a lot of fun. And then they have an experience together in which for the first time she comes, but she comes because she feels alive, because she feels deserving, not because they did anything so uniquely different in the act itself of sex. And then she tells me, you know, it's interesting, I have this with food too. Whenever we go to eat together, and we are in a restaurant, if he finishes before me and I still have food on my plate, I give him what's on my plate. Meaning this woman gives not because it makes her feel good, but because it makes her feel less guilty.
Yes.
So I gave her an assignment and I said, do you like ice cream? So she says, yes, I like ice cream. So I said, you're going to buy yourself the perfect cone and you're going to eat this ice cream in front of your husband. And you're going to lick it, and you go, you know, an ice cream, it's you can lick it up, down, top, bottom, you know, around, you know. And she starts to play with me in this whole thing. And while you eat it, he can do nothing else but watch.
No reaction.
Because it's, you know, you can take it as a metaphor of masturbation, but it is a metaphor of pleasure, of self-loving, of self-pleasing. And the act itself of I'm eating there my whole ice cream in front of you while you watch, it's not the while you watch, it's while I am dealing with the anxiety inside of me that wants to stop this at any time. That can't stay inside my own body, inside my own pleasure, and to monitor that. So the visit of this man is not just, the visit is just actually to be next to her while she is visiting herself.
I just want to say thank you because I love this lecture and I'm really happy you're speaking at Sinai Temple, my temple tonight. I have two questions. I don't know if this is on, but one question, when you talked about appearances and you know, having imagination, what if there is a difficulty with imagining someone when their weight or their appearance is starting to get in the way? And the second question is, you're having a lecture this weekend, I believe, regarding infidelity, and there's something of a sort of an open policy or something, open door of communication regarding that. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Those are two big questions. You know, I'll give you a very personal entrance to the first question. It goes like this. If I had the looks of then with the confidence of today, there is no connection between, especially women, how young and beautiful they may be and how they feel on the inside. And how deserving they feel to feel good about themselves. So I am very little actually working on the exterior, because I completely understand that many people don't see the exterior because it's never good enough anyway. What makes it good enough is a level of self-acceptance. And that comes with life, with maturity, with therapy, with a process of acceptance is probably acceptance, appreciation, gratitude, not taking stuff for granted, all of that, you know, and doing for others usually helps you feel better about you too. So this is, you know, when people tell me I don't fantasize, I don't believe it. I think that it's because they have an idea of what fantasy is about. I had once a person and she said, I don't fantasize, which is actually more a female complaint, I have to say. But she says, you know, he fantasizes about this and doing that and this place and that place. I don't fantasize. I just would like him to come toward me and to just stroke my hair first and not immediately go and grab my breast. And then I would like him to kind of leave me alone and be busy with his own things so that I could move over to him. And then he could kind of respond a little bit, but not immediately come after me. You know, I don't want every hug and every stroke and every gaze to instantly become a demand for sex. So that and I'm thinking, this is not fantasy. In my book, that's not a kitchen recipe. This is totally fantasy. It's just, you know, it's not what, because we have an idea of what that is supposed to look like. You know, this is about you know, a dance. It's a dance, this whole thing. I come near you, but you don't immediately come after me so that I can kind of build my own wanting. And then you respond, but just enough, not immediately. Don't overwhelm me with your wanting, because if you overwhelm me with your wanting, then I lose connection to my own and I instantly start to feel like I do what you want and I no longer feel like I do what I want. And now we are into the traditional power structure of sex. That's in a nutshell on the first question. The second one. On infidelity, I'm going to be talking for 2 full days about it. It is the subject of my new book. And no, I don't know where you took the idea of an open policy at all. I have... One of the subheadings. And it says open... No, an open secret policy. The open secret policy is something that I draw from the work of Janice Spring, which is basically that in my work with couples today, I don't always work just with the couple. I see the 2 people as part of the couples therapy separately. Some sessions I do with the 2 of you, but I speak the entire time with you in the presence of your partner. So I'm doing an individual session in the presence of the other. And some sessions I am alone with you and I'm doing a couple session in the absence of the other. Because I believe that in matters of intimacy, sexuality and infidelity, people need a private space to talk. And the open secret policy is that in the first session I tell people, when I work with you, I may see you alone and together. I may see you alone only once because I want to just have a non-partial view where I don't see you organized by the presence of the other. Who are you when you're not with your husband or with your wife? 2 men, 2 women, same, you know. And when I see you alone, those will be confidential sessions. Because especially in the subject of infidelity, the traditional stance of American therapists has been you either have to tell your partner, because I cannot have a secret that your partner doesn't know. So either you need to tell your partner or you need to stop. And when that happens, that either the person doesn't come back or they lie in my face. I need to know what goes on, otherwise I am a disempowered therapist. And second of all, it is not my place to tell you that you need to stop. You know, the therapy is sometimes about should I stop or should I stay or should I leave or should I go? And you know, the revelation of the secret is the therapy, not a precondition for the therapy. So it's a complicated stance, but it's an ethical stance with a clear contract, and that's the open secret policy, in which the 2 people know that they will be able to tell me things that their partner doesn't know. It's not about infidelity, it's for anything. But it's clear to me that I began to switch when a woman came to me a while back and said, 20-something years, I can't stand it, can't stand this smell, I fake it, I wait for it to be over. And I thought to myself, would I tell this lady, you either should tell your husband or I can't work with you? Sexual secrets come in many forms. If this man found out that this is what his wife's been thinking while she's doing all the noises that point to other things, I think he would be no less destroyed. What's the point? Because honesty in the West is a confession, especially in the United States. It's the moral cure of confession. It's the belief in the importance of laying it out. In many other parts of the world, honesty is not about saying it, but about what it's like for the other person to live with the knowledge. And the preservation of the other person who needs to live with that information is a factor in deciding if to reveal that information. In the States, the premise is the revelation is good as a starting point. And that's not cross-culturally always the case. And on that level, I mean, I'm going to be at the University of Irvine with a whole group of distinguished colleagues for 2 days, so on the subject of infidelity. But that's the open secret policy, because many therapists are very torn by the notion of working with a secret. Now, I'll tell you something. If you go to Mexico and you ask the people, a colleague of mine went and she asked the therapists there, 250 therapists in a room, do you work with secrets? American therapists have a real problem about holding a secret. Not if you tell them that you emptied $50,000 of the bank account. That's not the secret. They have a problem with the infidelity secret per se. That is a policy that works well in a pseudo-egalitarian environment. In any society where women are at risk, you bet therapists work with secrets. Do you understand? Nobody in Mexico understood the question. It was a given. It was so obvious to them. You know, so the policy of secrecy and revelation is very culturally embedded, is all I want to say.
I think we have time for 2 more.
How are we doing?
Good.
Okay.
Annette Bartolina, Psych 86502. I wondered if you could give any insight on, for the general public, with the epidemic of web pornography and the epidemic of sexual addiction, especially in the male population. What's a healthy mindset? What's a healthy way to deal with that mentally?
Every one of your questions is a one-day seminar, you know. There is so much to say about the World Wide Web and porn and, you know, what they call the triple engine machine, right? Affordability, accessibility, anonymity. There is so I have actually been thinking and writing now in preparation about love and sex online, but not just about porn. It's love and sex online. It's how the virtual space, which is not a geographic space, actually creates an immediacy of intimacy that allows people to share a lot more things with people they have never met than with the people that they live with, because it's a psychological space and not a physical space. So when it comes to porn per se, I think that I would like to separate porn from addiction. I think there's a problem in constantly using the word porn addiction, you know, and then I think we have a lot of discussion still about what is sexual addiction. Sexual compulsion or hypersexuality or because, you know, a lot of people, a lot of governments, a lot of authorities have a stake in what is normal sex, what is normality, what is normative. And those people are also in the conversation about pornography. It's not a neutral conversation. So I'm a tiny person in there, and it's a subject in which I generally don't speak like this because I am still not knowing exactly where I am. I'm listening, I'm learning. I know the people who are struggling and who have a problem. I recognize it, they recognize it. But I also understand that there is, for me, a question, and I know that in straight couples, porn may instantly be seen as a form of non-monogamy, and that in my gay couples, that is not the question. Okay? They understand that they each go to porn. It may have consequences in the relationship, but they are not seeing this as a form of betrayal. Nor that you want somebody else that isn't me, therefore you're not attracted to me. So it's very important for me to watch this in same-sex couples and in heterosexual couples. It gives me the range of responses possible. But porn is about high intensity, low emotion. And it is a male's universe which I think it helps me understand when I also look at not just the economics of it and all of that, but at what has been asked of men in modern couples. Because the revolution around manhood in intimate adult relationships is huge and in a very short amount of time. That you should continue to be the provider, the protector, the hunter, but you should also be the vulnerable and the caring and the loving. And the greatest addition to men in the last 50 years is the invention of fatherhood.